you
All
go.
right. My friends, that brings us to the question of the week. And the question of the week this week, Greg, is a question that nobody can really answer, but I want everybody to think about. And so I'm hoping that everybody thinks about this a little bit and tries to find an answer. And we'll talk about more why in a second. So Maria,
this is like a philosophy question then.
a bit of a philosophy question, one that's worth a second thought, even though some people are going to say, it's impossible. Think about it for a second. So Maria asks in our Frequent Miler Insiders group. This was in response to a Vacasa post, but it's not really a Vacasa question. She said, question for you. We booked a trip, air and hotel, with our Capital One Venture card with the intention of using points accumulated at 1-to-1 to erase the purchase, essentially, to erase the travel purchase. This happened prior to the news of Capital One joining the points transfer game, which can't entirely be true. I think she means before they became 1-to-1 partners with so many people.
Sure.
Should we hold off on using points for this trip at the 1 cent each? They were going to erase the trip at 1 cent each. Should we hold off, given these new 1-to-1 transfer partners, these new transfer partnerships from Capital One? Should we keep the points or should we redeem them now at 1 cent each to erase the trip that we've already booked?
Yeah. I think that if she's not flush with Capital One miles, like if she doesn't have more than she can use, that it's really worth thinking about keeping them for better value. That's what we've talked about that actually many times with other transferable points currencies, like with Chase points. Do we really want to use the pay yourself back thing and cash them out at 1.5 because you might be using them for other transfers? And we've generally said, well, you want to keep enough transferable points around for, like, if you think you're going to be booking, for example, an international business class trip or something along those lines. If you have some ideas for how you might want to use your transferable points to get fantastic value, way better than 1 cent per point value, you should keep around that much. And I realize it's a lot of guesswork is how much you'll need, but hopefully you have some idea. And I like to keep like in the neighborhood of 300,000 transferable points in each of the programs. I don't have that many Capital One yet since I just finally got a Capital One card, but in each of the other programs, I have more than that. And so I would consider cashing out down to about 300,000, but I certainly wouldn't go below that because I want to have enough available for opportunities that come up and, when I want to travel internationally, business or whatever. And so I think that's the same here, that if she's interested if Maria's interested in using the points to great value, she wants to play the game. That's the one side of the game, right? Is figure out how to get the most value from your points. If she wants to play that side of the game, then yeah, she might want to think about just paying, not erasing those points.
Yeah, and it's obviously tough to answer because I don't know the situation. I don't know how expensive the trip is. I don't know what the money means to Maria versus, how significant it is to pay for this trip in cash and whether that puts a dent in the savings or this or that. It all depends on what the kind of trip is. It's very hard to answer definitively, but there was definitely a large part of me that was like, oh, I'd rather hold those points. And that's a perspective I've taken on a lot of my points, that I'd rather hold them for better value down the road. But just the other day, I did the bills and was looking through my points because I maintain the balances. And now I kind of put them into a spreadsheet and have a cash value. And so the cash points, the points that actually can be cashed, like Chase or Amex membership rewards, I keep in one section. And so I look at how much I could cash them out for if I needed to, if there's some catastrophic event or whatever else.
Right.
And the more those points piles grow during the pandemic, and I'm not anywhere near what some people have, some people on this podcast have, I look at the pile and I'm like, there's a lot of things I could do with that money. There's investments I could make. I've been investing more and more in long-term stuff. Also, splashing my toes in the cryptocurrency pool and things like that. And then real estate investments, we've been interested in investing in a home for a while. There's a lot of different things like that. And I say, these points are potentially worth a lot of cash money here. And am I crazy? And, should I be using those and putting dollars and cents in the bank rather than holding on to these points that don't appreciate in value at all?
Yeah.
And that's it's a tough one to answer. But as these programs get more and more cash like, that becomes a harder and harder dynamic, because the Capital One
Mhm.
thing in particular very much looks to me like buying miles at 1 cent a mile. Like every point that I transferred to win recently, I just transferred the points for the Vacasa vacation rental. And
Right.
there was definitely part of me that for a minute was like, okay, this is $450 because I'm going to spend $450 on travel at some point. This is $450 worth of money, essentially, that I could have in my pocket. I could put into an investment, or I can buy Wyndham points with it. That's because that's what it felt like I was doing when I transferred, and I decided to go ahead
Essentially
and
were.
buy it.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah.
that was okay with me. But I feel like the game is getting more and more like, and we said this months ago, but I feel like it's getting more and more like that, especially I think as many of us haven't traveled and have accumulated more points. I feel like more of us are probably in that boat where it's like, I don't know. I mean, my inclination, Maria, is to hold your points for better value, but I'm not sure that I'm right. Like,
Right.
so there's that.
And I'd say that the best approach is to somehow magically know exactly how many points you need to keep around as transferable currency, and absolutely cash out all the rest, because
Right.
when you cash it out, you could start putting in investments that will grow, as Nick said. Whereas if it's sitting around and not getting used in the point program, it's certainly not going to grow.
Right.
And so that would be ideal. The reality is, one, we don't know how many points we're going to use. so that's really hard.
I definitely thought I was going to use more points last year than I did. Right. I mean, even once things started to change last year, I thought I would use more points this year than I'm going to, probably.
Yeah.
So.
And there's an emotional side to it, that sort of an irrational side to it, that just sort of says, oh, I like my points. I like my points are more fun than pennies. And so, I certainly, I feel that very strongly. I have a hard time cashing out. I cashed out quite a lot of membership rewards points this year, but I still have a ton because Amex had so many great deals recently. And it was hard to do, but because it was totally rational, but it was, there's the irrational. I love my points.
Right. And I want to be able to have these luxury trips for as long as I possibly can. And I don't want to miss out on those because I took some money that I don't need for a specific purpose right now. I think that's the hard part of cashing them out, is like, if there's not something specific I want to buy that I'm cashing them out for, then it makes it harder for me to cash them out when I'm like, oh, but I could fly first class. I could stay at a really nice place someday down the road. But there's definitely a big part of me that's like, but I could be watching an investment balance increase if I cash those out. So it's a very difficult situation, I think, a difficult question to answer. And I think it's one that people should think about, because as I said before, I think, it is a somewhat a crazy and irrational game to hang on to huge balances in these various programs. So you do have to kind of try to figure out where that line is, where the magical line that Greg's talking about in terms of how many points do I need to be comfortable, and then I should probably turn the rest into cash.
Yeah.